Hi, I'm Stacey Williams-Ng, and we are going to be talking about the Rhythm and Soul Tarot. This is video 2 in the series of exploring the whole deck. This is the Minor Arcana, so I hope you watched the first one. And we are going to be talking in this one about the Minor Arcana, specifically the Jazz suit. Stay tuned. Okay, let's get started on the Minor Arcana. So I am, in this video, specifically going to be talking about the suit of Jazz, which is the fire suit in the Rhythm and Soul Tarot. But I wanted to begin with the 4 aces so that you can see the parallelism between the 4 suits. So all 4 suits, each of the 4 suits, I should say, represents an iconic foundational music genre. So we have fire, water, air, and earth. Just like in a standard tarot deck, you would have the wands, the cups, the swords, and the pentacles or coins. Now, the fire suit represents passion, the things we do, the things we desire and wish for and go after, and action and charisma, things like that. The cups suit or the water suit typically represents the world of the heart and feelings and emotions. And the air suit, swords, typically has to do with the life of the mind, conflict, and so on. And then worldly matters like food and health and our earthly needs is the suit of earth or pentacles. So what I did is I took the 4 foundational American music genres, jazz, blues, rock and roll, and country, and made those each assigned those different elements, which is kind of cool because jazz is fiery, as we all know. It's very passionate and very creative. Blues is all about feelings. It's all about the whole genre is about transmuting pain into joy. And rock and roll is about conflict and anger and voice and saying what you really think, kind of a thing. And then you've got country music, which its very name, country, goes really well with earth. Now, in a traditional tarot deck, a lot of times you get this sort of thing with, the hand holding the cup, the hand holding the sword. So I have this sort of hand of God or hand of angels holding an iconic instrument in each of the 4 suits. So with jazz, it is and I know so many of you are like, oh my God, finally she's going to tell us what that weird thing is in the root suit. So we'll be talking about that more, and be sure and watch the video on the root suit. But here it goes. So this is a saxophone. It is specifically a soprano sax. I know we're used to the J shape of the sax, but fun fact, a lot of folks when they're reading tarot think of the Ace of Wands as kind of the sex card. It's very phallic. So I thought it would be fun to make a soprano sax, which was played by John Coltrane and many other greats in New Orleans. And because it's, straight line. The Ace of Blues is a jug, which is a water container. Obviously, it's really a whiskey container, but it also alludes to jug bands. If you're familiar with the phenomenon of jug bands, they played whiskey jugs. They would blow across the top of it. They played combs and pipes and all kinds of crazy stuff. It was like a vaudeville type thing where it was just anything that was lying around you could turn into a musical instrument. And, folks still do this. Ace of Axes is, of course, the famous Fender Stratocaster, which is, an iconic rock and roll guitar. And then the Ace of Roots is a mountain dulcimer. There are a lot of, instruments that could represent country. And frankly, if you get down to it, the guitar is played in all 4 of these type things. So all 4 of these genres. So by doing the Ace of Roots with the mountain dulcimer, which is also called the hog fiddle in some parts, it was fun for me to think about having a uniquely American instrument and something that really only belongs to this genre. So in the background, you'll see the Appalachian Smoky Mountains. Now, I'm going to put all these away, and we are specifically going to talk about the jazz suit. So let's get into it. The Ace of Jazz. Talked about it a little bit already. It's the soprano sax. Now, the Ace of Fire, the Ace of Wands, represents passion, new ideas, and fire, taking on new initiatives. And here we have the instrument. When we get to the page card in all 4 of these suits, what you will see is a child playing the instrument that is featured on the ace. So when we get to the page, we're going to be seeing a kid playing a saxophone. Just like when we get to the page of blues, we're going to be seeing, a kid with a whiskey jug, just not drinking from it. We'll talk about that later. The 2 of jazz is like the 2 of wands. It's about planning, goals, journeys. I'll let you look at it a little closer. Anyone who has ever been to New Orleans will be familiar with this particular alleyway. It's right by the cathedral in the French Quarter. And this gentleman is presumably going to a gig, as I imagine it. So I've got him holding 2 instruments. Maybe he's bringing one for a buddy, or maybe he plays 2 instruments, but hence the 2. And he is facing away from us, looking to new beginnings and new journeys. He's on his path. The 3. The 3 of wands / jazz is all about synthesis and action and process. And, in the 2, you've set your goals and you're on your journey. But in the 3, you really experience that expansion of creativity. So I have a trumpet player, mostly because I thought the 3 buttons on the trumpet would be a fun correspondence for 3, and also to jazz. And so he is in this golden yellow, which is very fiery, and he has 3 rays of light coming out from him that represent the music that he's making. The 4 of jazz is about jubilee, joy, celebrations. A lot of people think of this as like a wedding card because it's a celebration and joy. But 4s, think about it, 4s are also about structure. We talked about this in the Major Arcana. The Emperor represents structure and rules. And to me, this is like the rules of creativity. Sure, there's jubilee and joy, but we also have to think about like the kind of hard work. Art looks effortless, but it's not. I tell you what, painting the individual fishnet tights on these girls, that was hard. The 5 of wands, struggle. I like to think of it as a sort of a turf war kind of a card. So the 5 of jazz, sticking with our New Orleans theme, is a Mardi Gras concept, because the crews, if you're familiar with the crews of New Orleans, it's spelled Krewe. It's actually a pretend word that only exists in New Orleans. But the crews represent these groups that at Mardi Gras kind of have their own turf wars. And so these are people hitting sticks against each other, which really harkens to the idea of the wands that this comes from, like rods and wands and sticks. So this one, I think, is the closest to the 5 of wands, but also New Orleans. The 6 of wands, or the 6 of jazz, is about great celebrations and really getting the recognition you deserve for hard work. And in this image, we have the queen of the Mardi Gras parade, or at least the queen of her crew. And I've created an imaginary crew of Jupiter. She's, got the symbol of the planet Jupiter on her dress, and that represents expansion because, she's being honored for her great work. So here she is, crowned and royal and getting her own parade. The 7. The 7 of jazz is still a Mardi Gras concept. And I would encourage you to look up the flambeau of New Orleans. It's a French word, and it means flames. And flambeau is spelled Flambeaux. It's plural, but it means the torches, basically. So this is a character that is sort of fighting for his own turf. See how these guys are coming at him with sticks? He's in the dark. He's in a dark Mardi Gras parade, and he's carrying one of the traditional Mardi Gras flambeaux, and he's ready to fight if he has to. He's going to stand his ground. The 8 is very much like the 8 of wands, with the flying wands through the air. It is not an elaborate painting. It's very minimalist. These are drumsticks, which plays, into the music theme. But I also believe that tarot needs to be easy to read. And when this card is meant to symbolize, extremely fast movement, things, flying through the air, communication that's efficient, this was the most efficient way to paint this. And it actually reminds me of Zydeco music. And in the book, I talk a little bit about the origins of Zydeco, which is another music genre from New Orleans. The 9 is always a sad card. It's about resilience. The Rider-Waite-Smith deck has a man who has a head bandage on. So with my singer here, I also have her in kind of a head bandage and just a really pained expression on her face, if you can see that. I really wanted her to look sort of like that the show must go on feeling. She's on stage and she's giving of herself to us, even though she's really suffering quite a bit from something personal. The 10 of jazz, just like the 10 of wands, represents burdens. Mine's a little more humorous because it's like a petite woman holding a huge tuba. So she's maybe in a marching band, let's say. But the 10 of wands, even in its classical sense, sure, it's about burdens, but it's a neutral approach to burdens. It's not necessarily a burden you don't want. And so she is willingly playing this tuba. She is willingly going out there and doing this hard work in order to continue the performance. So it's not really meant to be a negative card. The page. So as promised, I have a child because the pages represent childlike energy, adolescent energy. And my page, even though pages are typically a feminine energy, is a little boy. And he's playing a traditional, the J-shaped saxophone that most of us think of saxophones, not the soprano, but it's still the same idea. So he has the difference between the page and the ace in tarot. The ace is the spark of the idea. The page is when you actually take up that idea and make something of it. It's like you're a freshman. You're ready to start high school or college. You're ready to start that new project. You take it up. So that's why we have the object or the instrument in the ace, and then we have the personification of ourselves with childlike enthusiasm in the page. The knight. So the knight of jazz is all about confidence and energy, and it's that hot Sagittarius energy. My friend Nicole is the model for this, and she's just so perfect for this with her beautiful blonde hair, blonde afro, and it's filled with flowers, and she's covered in glitter and makeup and everything. She is ready to be in the parade, and she's spinning her fire. So hopefully when you see this, you'll really think of that beautiful, joyful Knight of Wands passion. Another detail I'd like to point out is there are pyramids in the background of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and Memphis has a famous pyramid. Because we're named after Memphis, Egypt. So even though this is my New Orleans suit, I had to sneak the Memphis pyramid in both the page and the Knight of Jazz. There it is. So those of you who are from Memphis or who have been to Memphis will appreciate my nod to my hometown there. The Queen of Jazz. So I'm so proud of this card that she ended up on the cover of the box. This is Lil Hardin Armstrong, or at least it's inspired by her. It's not really a picture of her. You're not going to find a portrait of her in this position. I painted her from my imagination, and I imagined the yellow dress. But I wanted her to be this regal icon of creativity, because if you know anything about Lil, she was the wife of Louis Armstrong, the famous jazz musician. But what people don't often realize is she was the unsung talent. She was the unsung hero. She had a formal music education, and she was the one who arranged Louis' music and supposedly, came up with his outfits and his styling. And she was like the brains behind that whole act. So she's this amazing musician in her own right and musical arranger. So I thought she was a great inspiration for the leadership that's represented in the Queen of Wands. The King of Jazz is meant to be Buddy Bolden, also from my imagination, because there are no existing images of Buddy. He never had a formal photograph taken. And actually, he's one of the oldest characters in the deck. This is probably the earliest kind of scene historically, if you imagine him as a real person. I mean, Buddy Bolden was a real person, but this character, predates the word jazz. They say Buddy Bolden didn't use the word jazz, but he was the one that sort of invented it. If you look carefully, I have some correspondences from traditional tarot. There is a salamander next to him, which represents eternity. So you'll find the salamander that goes with the King of Jazz, just like you'll find the sunflower that goes with the Queen of Jazz / Wands. She doesn't have a black cat, but she has a piano with black keys on it, and that is good enough. So that concludes my exploration of the jazz suit in the Rhythm and Soul Tarot. Stay tuned for the next video in which we talk about the blues suit.